Hi, it's Tracy from Two Rocks Tarot, and today I'm doing a VR to Boho Tarot on her tarot practice evolution and how your tarot practice has changed over the years. So I do believe in her videos she said she's been reading for 15 years, and she went through some decks that she no longer kind of connects to because she's either outgrown them or she's just doesn't use them basically, and she's not feeling connected to them as she once was. So this got me to thinking about how my tarot practice has changed. So I've been reading for around 30 years, and I have also sort of read Lenormand for, hang on, I always have to look when this deck was published. So this was published way back in 2000. So I've been reading a Lenormand for 22 years. And this, the Lenormand deck that I taught myself is Titania's Fortune cards. So this is the very first deck, the very first edition is what I'm trying to get out. So this is the first edition of Titania's Fortune cards. And as you can see, it's much more better than the second edition. This is was gifted to me from a subscriber. I don't think she's on YouTube anymore because I never hear from her anymore, and because I'm not on Instagram, I don't know. But that's the actual cover the first edition comes into. So that's how I taught myself how to read Lenormand. Now my Lenormand hasn't changed, except I read Lenormand intuitively, which a lot of die-hard Lenormand readers say that you can't do. You can't read Lenormand intuitive. It's crap. Of course you can. You can read anything intuitively. But it got me to thinking about how it's changed, how I have actually changed reading the tarot. So, of course, when I first started, I actually learned the Rider-Waite system. So that's how I learnt, and I devoured all the books. And I haven't got the first deck anymore because I actually gifted it to a work colleague many years ago. And I'm thinking about how it's changed. So I suppose when it comes to decks, I haven't really outgrown decks. I've gotten rid of some because I just didn't plain or like them anymore. And one of them was the Dreams of Gaia. I kind of fell in love with all the images and everything, but there was one card in there that was a dead ringer for my ex-husband. And every time I looked at it, I just saw him. I couldn't handle it, so I got rid of the deck. But I have to actually speak about this deck. So how my reading style has changed now, it is purely intuitive. I very rarely use the Rider-Waite system when I read the tarot. Sometimes I do, sometimes I do. It all depends on the actual images of the deck that I'm using. But the way it's changed the most is that I communicate with spirit now. So I do pets in spirit, I do people in spirit, and that's the biggest evolution of all for me. And how it all started was when I was on Instagram, there was an actual, and I think it was about 3 to 4 years ago, there was a challenge on Instagram about connecting with your spirit guides and connecting with spirits. And I thought, oh, gee, this sounds really, really interesting. I think I'll do it. Now, prior to this, a couple of days before, I actually got a deck out that had been sitting in my desk that's behind me there. For about 15 years, and this is the Celtic Dragon Tarot, and something told me to take it out, and for some reason I was drawn to using this deck. Now this deck I didn't connect with because I thought the cards, the dragons are a little bit wishy-washy. It wasn't the fiery, powerful dragons that I was used to, and I just didn't like it. I was very disappointed, so I put it away. But something told me to use this deck, so I decided to use this deck, and by God, it was the most awesome deck. It just screams to me now. I couldn't get any messages out of this deck when I first got it, and now it's just the most amazing reader, like I couldn't tell you. So I thought, wow, this is pretty awesome, I can't believe it. So I do believe that I wasn't actually ready back then, 15 years ago, to read with this deck. I wasn't ready to read the message it was going to give to me. So then I decided, I wonder what would happen if I asked a spirit to step forward who wanted to get a message across to their loved one. Now, I did start using the Dreams of Gaia for that, but like I said, I just couldn't get over that one card. And I've heard about this before, where certain decks trigger certain things in you, and I didn't believe that of me, but I just could not stand this card. And I can't remember exactly what card it is. I can see it in my mind's eye now. I absolutely hated it. So, but I did start with that deck, and I got some really good responses from Instagram. So then there was another deck that I didn't really connect with, and this one was the Oracle of Visions by Ciro Marchetti. And I thought, I might try, because I got rid of the Dreams of Gaia, I might actually try this particular deck. So I've actually edged mine. I could not connect with this deck either. I absolutely love the images in this deck. I think it's absolutely awesome, but I just could not connect. Now, funny, because this was one of the cards that I used, and when I did a spirit reading on Instagram, and I felt like that the lady had actually passed away from a brain tumor, from brain cancer or whatever, and the one girl wrote, she said, "I'm sure that's my girlfriend that you connected with," and that's how it all started, and that's how my evolution of tarot started. I started to use this deck, and this is a funny thing with this deck, because every time I pull it out and I do the cards like I'm doing now, I see cards that I haven't seen before, which is kind of really weird, isn't it? Now, I notice a lot of people say the same thing about Ciro Marchetti's decks, that they can't actually connect to them, as beautiful as they are. And I do feel that this is because he's an artist foremost, foremost, he's an artist. So he doesn't read the tarot or anything like that himself. And I think if you don't, and you just do it purely on the art, you're not going to get the passion and the spirit of the card if you don't actually read cards yourself. That's kind of what I'm feeling anyway. That's how I feel about his cards. But for spirit, it's absolutely fantastic. It brings the spirits forward like nothing. I have got a spirit reading coming up, a person one that I haven't done for ages, but I've actually used the Voyager Tarot, and I've used the Housewife Tarot, so that's coming up, I think, next week or something like that. I decided to use different decks now when it comes to my people in spirit, and that is a big... Sorry, my camera just died then. I don't know what happened then. But if you had first told me when I first started reading the tarot all those years ago that I would actually be doing spirit messages, connecting with people, connecting with pets, I would have told you were crazy. There was absolutely no way. It's only because I did this Instagram challenge, and I'm one of those people who like to ask different things of the tarot. So when I first started, it was purely my future. That's all I wanted to know about, my future. Would I be happy again? Would I get married again? Should we move here? Will I sell my house? Will I buy a house? That was all the types of questions that I concentrated on. And now it's completely connecting with spirit. I seem to do a lot of spirit messages. I use the tarot for healing. I still do predictive readings, and I do that professionally. So I do read online professionally, and I've got my own website. I do angelic type readings now. I seem to do more spiritual type readings. So my whole evolution of tarot has changed from just purely trying to predict the future, and I won't say trying, because I did predict the future, but trying to predict the future, to going full circle to connecting with spirit, to doing spiritual readings, to doing I still do my Lenormand. I absolutely love Lenormand readings. I really, really do. But yeah, that's how it's changed the most, and it was all from doing this Instagram challenge. And it's funny how your perspective changes. So I've always liked to ask different things of my cards too. So I might ask, are aliens real? Are vampires real? Are werewolves real? And I really recommend people to do that, is to actually ask really out there questions and really look at what the tarot is telling you. So I've gone from a predictive reader to more to definitely a spiritual reader, and to an intuitive reader too. So I've gone to from always using the books. I never look at the books that come with the decks unless there's a completely different type of artwork in there. Then I like to look at the books to see what the creator is saying about it. But then I put it away, and I just read what I see in the cards. So I'm a purely pictorial reader now. So I've really stepped away from the Rider-Waite system, but of course sometimes I fall back on it, and I still think it's good to have some type of system that you learn, whether that be Toth, the Rider-Waite, or any other type of system that's out there when it comes to the tarot. I still think it's good to have something like that to back you up, because sometimes you look at a card and you're thinking, what the hell does that mean in this situation? And you can fall back on the meanings that you've sort of memorized. And this is really, really important, because sometimes you'll get a client who will book a reading with you, but they'll block you off. They don't really want to know what it is that they're asking you, and they'll block you off. So you can fall back on that type of system, type of reading if you want to. But I still find pictorially, I still read the majority of pictorially. So my evolution hasn't been so much in the decks that I've chosen, but I noticed that this year, and even in the clothes that I wear now, even my hair, I like really, really colourful decks. I've gone to really, really colourful decks, and luckily I have got colourful decks in my collection. I'm looking at really different type of decks, so I've brought, you know, really different Lenormands. I don't want the same everyday type of Lenormand, so that's why I brought the Heloise Lenormand. There's another one I've got my eye on in Etsy now. I've really sort of changed. And also with oracle cards, I never read oracle cards, but I tend to like looking at oracle cards now as well, which I did need last year when I was going through my breast cancer journey. I found oracle cards were just what I needed, basically, just what the doctor ordered. So I don't feel that I've outgrown decks. Give it away or sell it, keep it for a bit. I'm not saying you should keep it for 15 years like I did, but I don't like, well, back then there wasn't any of these buy, swap and sells that you get now with the tarot. I suggest to hang on to it. Just hang on to it, because you might not be ready for the messages that it wants to give you. And as for me, it was many years later when I started to doing these spiritual readings that this deck actually screamed out. Now, it's not a deck that you would think would necessarily be a spiritual deck, but it's just the way it is. It's like with this particular, this is the Christless Tarot. This is really, really good for past life. Absolutely, past life readings is wonderful. I've done I've gotten a few of them, past life readings on myself, and I find that I had the past life oracle, and I just find it didn't work. It just didn't work like a regular tarot deck does. You get much more out of it when you just look at a normal deck. That was just my opinion, but I ended up selling the past life oracle. I just couldn't connect to it. It just didn't make sense. It was much easier for me to just use a normal tarot deck to do past life readings. So that's another, I suppose, evolution, is that I do past life readings. I absolutely love it. I think I've done a few videos on past lives. I can't really remember. I might have done it with a spread. Indeed, when I was reading the tarot, and I'd do a spread, and I wasn't quite understanding what the tarot was telling me, I'd lay out the same amount of cards in the Lenormand so I could click what the actual tarot was telling me. And I kind of think it's improved my tarot reading doing it that way, because I was looking at it, the tarot, through Lenormand eyes and not necessarily through tarot eyes, and it sort of opened up my perspective a little bit more as well. So yeah, I haven't outgrown decks. I've grown into decks, and I've managed to dive deeper into the decks that I've owned. I did have quite a lot for sale that I was going to sell, and it wouldn't sell for some reason. So I ended up keeping them, and I'm really glad that I did, because I find now that I've gone full circle that I'm actually drawn to the decks that I first got when I first started to read the tarot. So, you know, I still like to use my Hanson Roberts, one of the first decks. I've got, you know, the Celtic Dragon Tarot. I still love my Lenormand. What else? I'm just trying to think about what else that I've got in there. I can't think off the top of my head, because I've got, I don't know, about 80, 90 decks or something like that. But I'm really, really feel drawn to working with older decks as well as new decks. So I don't think I've outgrown decks. I've grown into them, and I've turned completely from just a predictive reader now to a pictorial reader, to a spiritual reader, to connecting with spirits as well, doing, you know, pets in spirit, people in spirit. I've really, really, really changed, and I really would love to hear how your reading has changed. How have you, what I'm trying to say, how has your evolution of the tarot journey taken you? Where's it taken you? What do you do now differently than when you first started? I think this is a fascinating subject, actually. How has your reading style changed? Has it changed, or you still keep on reading like you always have? Do you use books, or do you throw away the guidebooks now? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, this is Tracy.